Good evening, and you're all very welcome to this evening's webinar, which has been brought to you tonight by the Teagasc advisory staff here in County Mayo. My name is Brendan Gary. I work in Teagasc and Ballina, and tonight, for the next hour, I'm delighted to be your host for this webinar on this Tuesday evening. Now, this evening's webinar is the third episode in a new four-part series of webinars, which will conclude next Tuesday evening at 8 p.m. Now, during this new series, we have covered some of the key agricultural issues facing Irish farmers, and tonight will be no different. Tonight we will look at two aspects of sheep husbandry, and the first topic tonight will be a presentation by Sheep Ireland researcher David Coen, who is well known to many of you farmers on tonight, and Dave is going to update us on the latest flock breeding initiatives underway to improve the sector. While later my colleague Dylan Gilligan from Teagasc Ballina will give us a presentation on timely management issues that farmers need to watch out for over the next number of weeks, so stay tuned for Dylan's presentation. Now, you, the viewers, are being encouraged to engage with our panelists here this evening, and we ask you to type your questions into the Q&A button at the bottom of your screens, phones or tablets. And later this evening, Tom Kelly, a dry stock advisor based in Teagasc Ballina, will put your questions live to both Dylan and David, so do type your questions in during the night. As always, this webinar is being recorded. It will be available to watch back on the Teagasc Mayo YouTube channel in the coming days, so stay tuned for that. So without further delay, I'll ask you now, David, to start sharing your presentation with us, and it's over to you now, David. That's great, David. Yeah.
Oh, I'm working. Perfect. Well, look at thanks very much to everyone in Teagasc Mayo for having me on. Look at as I said, David Coen is my name. I'm working with Sheep Ireland. Look at the last number of years, and look at that. I see a few names there on the list as well of farmers I've even been out to. So it was good to see people on. So I'm going to talk a bit on Sheep Ireland, what we're doing, kind of the lowland side and the Eurostars and figures. And then I'm going to talk a bit on what's been happening on the hillside. So just kind of covering all aspects over the next kind of 15, 20 minutes. So this is a slide I like to always talk about when I start any presentation for Sheep Ireland is that there's more to Sheep Ireland than just a few figures coming in off pedigree flocks. You can see here the amount of data that's coming in from industry, both in the meat factories, you can see there on the left-hand side from the Teagasc research. We also have European and national projects here down the bottom left that are all feeding in commercial data into the figures that we're producing, as well as, look, we have 17 to 18 different flock books at this stage feeding in data into the national database. So look at it's really very much the envy of many places, both in the UK and in Europe, where there's been many projects ran in these countries previously, but the projects are done and they have the research, but it doesn't end up anywhere. Where here in Ireland, the database that's always been fed into is the Sheep Ireland National Database. So that information is being saved there and logged there, and it'll be there for future generations to come. So you can see there's a lot of data feeding into these figures and into the information that's been given out to these commercial farmers. You can see here, this is just the growth we've seen. So Sheep Ireland started in 2009. We now have over 1,650 members of Land Plus. Land Plus is our main performance recording sector. So look at this, there's been a huge rise in the last number of years, down in some cases to schemes at different stages, but look at this, been rising all the time, and that's down to commercial farmers are seeing an advantage and seeing a benefit of these rams and looking for them in the market. So look at our Land Plus program has over, as I said, 1,650 flocks now. 92% of the pedigree animals in the country are now recording in the Land Plus program. We have 98% of the stock rams in these flocks are genomically tested. And you can see there's thousands and upon thousands of lambs being recorded per year, feeding into the national database to get star ratings for rams to be bought by commercial flocks and improve the genetics of these flocks. So, and look, there's work to do with it. There's still that missing piece of the hill sector, and that's being developed over the last few years, and I'll talk about that as we move on. So why do we need Eurostars? And look, I think the most important thing that a lot of people think with Sheep Ireland is that the Sheep Ireland is a pedigree-based system, or it's for pedigree sheep. Sheep Ireland is a commercial-based system. It's based off on your standard commercial having two lambs, rearing them up to the factory and moving off. We're here to provide commercial farmers with as much information as they possibly can when purchasing the rams they're doing. So, and that's the main idea is to provide a more profitable and sustainable industry for the sheep. That's our main target. And so why do we use EBVs, or why do we use breeding values? Why are they important? And I suppose the main thing to consider here is, where are the rams you're buying your rams from, and where are they trying to produce your lambs from? So take into consideration where the sheep are coming from. So we have two options here. We have farm A, which they're going on high perennial ryegrass, good quality grass, and they're getting intensively fed, which we'll see in many different places. And we also have our more extensive farm, where it's kind of vast grazing types, maybe not the best kind of grass you'd see, and there's no meal being fed. So obviously, you take the environment out of the equation. In this case, it's like there's going to be farmers that are very good at feeding sheep on and having them very strong. And obviously, if you're a ram lamb being reared in farm A, you'll be looking more like this. Um, and if you're being reared in farm B, you're looking more like this. So it's a case of, it does not mean that one lamb is better than the other. It just means the environment that they have been reared in is different. So it's taken into account that where you go into a mart or into a different sales, and you'll see rams that are being very well fed, very well looked after, and they're up on maybe up on 100 kilos now for ram lambs, versus a ram lamb that's being fed purely off grass and could be 20 or 30 kilos short, and yet there could be distinct differences in their stars. We take out of consideration the whole aspect of feeding out of the equations. The rams are compared within their own flocks, and then compared using linkage to compare the rams, not based off the biggest isn't always the best in terms of your genetic information, especially now with pedigree sheep, and that embryo transfers has now been a huge factor that's been used in pedigree flocks. So we're looking through all that to be able to provide you with the EBVs to tell you what the best genetics is to use on your commercial flocks, taking apart the feeding aspect. So its phenotypes is equal to a genotype and its environment. So in the simplest way, it's that lamb weight is based off genetics and the farm effect. So it has the good genetics, yes, but the farm effect is also having a consideration there. So is you know traditionally we would have always selected rams based off the look of them, and instead main thing here is it telling that full story, and really the feeding is a huge aspect to it. He's a big well fed ram. We need to say how will he actually perform in the system that I want him to fit into. So again, the question will be, when you're going out there to buy this ram, what do you want him to do? Do you want him to produce factory lambs for you, or do you want him to produce replacement females? So if it's factory lambs, we're looking at this more terminal type 5-star ram. If we're looking at replacement females, we're looking at the replacement indexes. So how do we do that? Well, when we go to any of our pedigree sales now, we have our Sheep Ireland catalogue there, um, and we have the information here for you. So in this case, we're going to look for a ram that's going to produce good strong factory lambs. And what do we look out for? So in this case here, we just have a Charlie ram. We're looking at the terminal index. So this is our terminal index here. We have a euro figure here, which is, you can see, is €2.58. That's a crossbreed evaluation, so across all the different breeds. If we're then looking for maybe more sub-index sides, we're looking at our lamb survivability, because look at lamb survivability is hugely important. We can have all the best genetics in the world, but if the lambs aren't surviving, um, they're not going to meet that potential. And we're also looking at our days to slaughter, because the longer the lambs spend on farm, the more it's costing you as the farmer. So if we can shorten them days and have better growth rates on our lambs, that would definitely increase profitability by reducing the cost of keeping these animals on farm. If we're then not worried about that, we're looking at more, we want to buy a ram for replacement females, we'll look more on the replacement index. So this is on the same side. If we have a replacement euro figure there, which is €4.47, that's across all breeds, and we have our 5-star figures there as well. Lamb survivability is also hugely important, as we said. Look at again, you can have all the best genetics, but if he doesn't survive. And the other aspect then to look at is the likes of your number of lambs born and daughter's milk. Um, these are huge aspects for keeping replacement females. And I think it's always important when we look at these figures and how they're made up. It takes time to develop figures into your sheep. You just need to be consistently using the better genetics to improve over time. Um, there isn't really a simple fix on this. It's like I said to a couple of farmers before. It's like you can't turn an Aberdeen Angus into a Belgian Blue overnight. It takes time to go double muscle. And it's the same with in any of them sites. It's continuously breeding them to get your better replacement females. Where do we find the rams? So we have here is the Sheep Ireland Ram Search. So look at this is a very useful tool for farmers to have a look at rams that you're looking to buy, especially here in say like the west of Ireland, your Mayo and Galway, Sligo, Leitrim. Um, if you're looking for a particular breed or a particular ram, you can go onto the ram search, filter for that particular breed, filter for the age, filter for the stars. You can also filter for the breeders themselves. So again, if you have a farmer that you go out to on a continuous basis or on an annual basis to buy rams, you can go online, see the figures of the farmer, and maybe have an idea in your head of these are the few rams that I'd like to look at based purely off figures, and then go out and have a look at the rams in from there, to ensure they're there. Um, what you can see also on the RAM search that you can't see on the catalog are these multiple extra sub-indexes. So again, the replacement and the terminal figures sum up as simple information for you, both based off replacement and terminal. If you're kind of more in depth into the information you have on your own flock, and you're finding that maybe barrenness is a factor that you have in places, or you'd see um, lamb survivability or lamb in difficulty are figures that are having an effect for me. You can go onto your ram search and select for rams with that are high on these particular traits that you want to improve within your own flock. Um, so just a bit of continuous research that we're looking at as well, and these are all coming on board the next few years. So the first one is the OVFEC. So OVFEC is a project we've been working on, where we're looking at animals that are more genetically resistant to worms. So that look at it to try and fight that whole anthelmintic resistance. If we can find out what animals are more resistant themselves, um, through DNA and through sample taking, we will be adding an index for that. We also have our methane and our carbon sub-indexes, and we've been working closely with with people in Teagasc for that. We also have mastitis and health traits coming on board. We have our hill index, our hill integration through OviFlock, which I'll talk about in a few minutes. And look, we have continuous commercial data and research coming in there from both Teagasc Better Farms. We have our own CPT farms, and we have genotype and phenotype farms that are feeding in high numbers of commercial data into the indexes. We actually are at a point where we've more commercial data making up the indexes than we do pedigree data currently. So again, as we said, Sheep Ireland is very much a commercial based system for commercial farmers. Um, just a small bit on the sheep improvement scheme. So look, we're now into year 3 of the sheep improvement scheme. I think we all at this stage probably know what it's about. So look, it came out in February 2023. The main aspects of it is that every farmer must purchase a Sheep Ireland genomically tested ram in the first 3 years. So we're now in year 3 of this. Most farmers online at this stage will have bought a ram. Um, some maybe lowland flocks or hill flocks may still be looking for a ram, and flocks that have over 150 ewes will have to buy a second ram in the next 2 years, in year 4 and 5 of the scheme. So what's involved? The lowland flocks need to purchase a 4 or 5 star ram in either the replacement or terminal index. He doesn't need to have it in both. So he can be a 4 star replacement, 1 star terminal, or he can be a 1-star replacement, 4-star terminal, and still qualify for the scheme. And look, at the best way to check that up is get the ram that you're looking to purchase, check him on the sheep, ard, and ram search, as I mentioned previously, or on our catalogs. There's an SAS tick there that helps you filter down that you're making sure that the ram you're purchasing is SAS eligible. And the hill flock side, then rams must be sire verified. So that's where the ram himself is genotyped and his sire is genotyped. And through DNA, we can verify that that sire is the sire of the ram that you are purchasing. So it's a huge. It seems a simple task, but on the hillside, it's a huge step forward in terms of flock buck production. And we'll talk in a minute on why the importance of that is. Um, it's also important to note that hill flocks have the option there as well to do the lowland option, which is buy a 4 or 5-star ram as well. So again, if you're a hill flock that's maybe looking at maybe the likes of a Blue Leicester or for mules, or you're looking at a Texel for a Hill Tex or whatever it may be, you can take that option as well. So the hill sector then, so the hill sector is look at as it's a sleeping giant. I always called it many a time. Um, it's so half the national flock are made up of um hill or hill cross ewes. So that's from the hill ewes themselves down to their replacement females, either through mules or hill texts, as mentioned previously, feeding down into the lowland side. So what that tells us is that if you can see on the left hand side here, 19% of hill rams in the country are producing over half the national flock. So if we can work and help farmers both improve the output from these hill rams and the output from and improve the genetics within the half the national flock, um, through this better genetics and finding out what lambs on the hill are what ewes in the hill are producing your lambs at 25 kilos and what ewes in the hill are producing your lambs at 12 kilos, and try and have that available to the farmers, and what ewes are surviving longer and lasting longer on the hill. And look, we've had great work with the hillside on that through the SAS scheme. Before scheme started, we had just over 200 to 250 rams genotyped with Sheep Ireland hill rams. We now have over 12,000 hill rams genotyped. So that's an awful lot of information now come in on hill rams, and that's hill rams themselves. We now have sire verification on all these rams. We have in a lot of cases grandsire verification on rams. So it's a huge step. There's been great positivity, especially in the West here, with the Connemara Mayo group and the Mayo Connemara group, where farmers are finding situations where they would have purchased a ram had it not been for the catalogue to show that the ram he was looking to purchase is actually related to the stock rams they had at home. So that was a very positive story. And look at it led on into to our next project, which I'm going to talk about here, which is the Oviflock project. So the Oviflock project is an European innovation partnership. So it's funded from Europe. This is about producing flock bucks within hill sheep. So mainly what we had with the SAS was we've an awful lot of hill ram information and sire information on that, but we're missing a lot of dam information. So this project is put out there for hill ram group members to get the dams of the rams genotyped and get them genotyped for free with us. So that again, when these rams go to sales, both commercial farmers and the breeders themselves can say, well, look at that's the ram I want to buy. This is the sire of that ram. This is the dam of this ram, and these are the great grandsires. So again, an awful lot of information for hill flocks to be allowed to make that information available to them. And again, it's all done through DNA. And look, at breeders can be sure when they're buying these rams, or commercial farmers can be sure that the rams they're buying are the DNA that's coming up in the catalogs, and they can assure themselves that they're not breeding in rams that have been previously, or could create inbreeding within them flocks. So what we're aiming for in 2025. So we're aiming for approximately 8,000 Joes to be genotyped in year one. So we're now over 5,500 um sheep done. So and we only started last September. So look, we're on track to get over the 8,000. Um, so each flock is allocated three genotypes on an annual basis. This is down to what they must do to get these genotypes. They must identify the dams of the potential saleable ram lambs before weaning. So again, in a lot of cases, farmers will be keeping ram lambs at weaning time to produce for either sold as ram lambs that year or sold as hoggas the following year. So they need to be able to identify them ram lambs, get them ram lambs genotyped, and the dams are genotyped for free with that. What happens is the technicians will come out to the farm, will take a DNA sample of all the ewes within that flock, and then the mothers will then subsequently be genotyped from there. The other DNA will be stored until a time that the ewes can come to breed ram lambs that are saleable. When the technicians are also there, we're also taking a weight of all the ewes. We're taking a body condition score of the ewes, a mouth score, um, DAG score, feet, lameness, mastitis, all aspects of that is recorded. And these animals are now all been digitalized and up on the Sheep Ireland database for the farmers. So they have a huge depth of information now on their flock. And look, at that can only stand for future information um, for the hill sheep sector going forward. Um, what we also have, and we have out since 2004 or 2024, is the genomic inbreeding checker. This has been used a lot by hill flocks, where a farmer has a genotyped hill ram at home. He can put that genotyped hill ram into one of the columns here, and he's out on the sale day, and he wants to check against the ram he's about to buy to see if there's a relation to the stock rams he has. And when he puts in the two rams, it'll give you a check to say this ram is very closely related or he's not related at all. Um, so that again, farmers can, even without the breeding information, just purely based off DNA, can say this ram is not related to the ram I have, so I can let this ram onto this ram's daughter. So it's a huge step forward, and it's been used a lot by the hill sector to date. So this just a bit of a wrap up on that. Look, thanks very much for your time. There's just a bit of a takeaway message is that the main aspect we need is we like thinking of that first slide is we need more and more data coming in to be sure and to increase the accuracy for ye for ye as commercial farmers and increase your confidence in the stars that are happening. And look at the hill sector then sire verification and cataloging is having a huge effect. And look at it's a case of just keeping it going over the next number of years, and I've no doubt that it'll benefit the whole sheep industry. So I'll just leave you to it at that. So thanks very much. Thanks very much for your time.
Thanks very much, dear David, and brilliant presentation there. Some interesting topics there that you discussed. We'll give you a little break now, and at this stage, I'm going to just ask you to stop sharing your presentation, David. And at this stage, I'll introduce our new next speaker, which is Dylan Gilligan from Teagasc Ballina. And Dylan is going to talk to us this evening about some management tips there that farmers can watch out for over the next number of weeks. So over to you now, Dylan. That's perfect now, Dylan. Yeah, over to you now.
Yeah, perfect. So look at as Brendan has said there. My name is Dylan Gilligan. I'm a scheme advisor up here in Ballina, and I'm just kind of going to be running through today some flock husbandry advice. It's kind of going to be topical enough for this time of year. I'm going to run through some mid-pregnancy management, I suppose, in a lowland flock. We're going to do a wee bit there on ram management, kind of maybe understanding the importance of looking after the ram, especially post mating. Looking at a bit in relation to sheep housing, things we need to look out for there, just to have as productive lambing as possible. Run through a bit on the lambing season, a bit on grazing management, and as I say, if there's any questions throughout, just type them into the box. So look, I suppose just firstly we'll run through a slide there on mid-pregnancy management. I suppose around this time of year now, you need to be considering separating out thin ewes for preferential treatment. There's a couple of options there. The indoors option, housing the sheep, that all kind of depends. We'll see later on anyways in relation to the housing. If you have to go feeding silage and hay, you're just going to have to be supplemented with concentrates or nuts, if it's poor quality silage. To determine this, farmers are going to have to go and do a silage sample, I suppose, just to get that bit of information in relation to what they are going to feed in the sheep. In relation to the outdoor feeding, then I suppose this is heavily dependent on the weather conditions and the grass that's available. I'll run through a couple of slides later on in relation to the grazing management, and kind of the focus that farmers need to have on grassland management at this time of the year. It's this time of year now that farmers have to make a plan for what grass is going to be available for ewes and lambs turnout in next February, next March. So we'll do a bit in that. Just in relation to the cross compliance, a big thing, I suppose, for sheep farmers, two things they kind of have to keep in mind, especially if farmers are feeding sheep outdoors. They can't be fed within 20 meters of a water course. Let's say if that be a round feeder, supplemented with nuts at feeders or that. And just in relation then, any farmers then stocked at over 100 kilos of nitrogen per hectare, they actually have to have storage requirements for 6 weeks. So they have to be able to house and have enough slurry storage for the flock for a 6 week period. So it's just something to keep in mind. In relation to the thin ewes, going and having to go feeding them, I suppose at this time of the year, you're talking 300 to 500 grams today of a basic ration. Really, it's going to cost €5 to €8 per ewe. The biggest thing with it is if any of them thinner ewes are down on a reduced body condition score, let's say if they're down at that 2.5, you kind of really want to be getting them pushed on to the 3 of a body condition score, just to leave things easier when it comes to the lambing time. It leaves things that much handier. And just in relation then, I suppose, as I say, a lot of it is hinging on the weather. If the weather does go bad, I know this time of year we're probably getting away good enough so far. But if there did come heavy rain or heavy frost, it's much easier to put on that bit of extra condition on them thinner sheep if the ewes are housed. So look, it's something to keep in mind. And that just in relation to the ram management, I suppose it's something a lot of farmers might disregard or kind of just not deem that important. But I suppose the biggest thing with it is there's that saying, the ram is half the flock. Like if you don't look after your ram, you're going to have a lot of problems in relation to ewes not going to lamb or that. Some of the biggest things when taking the ram away after fighting is kind of integrating them back into that group together. You kind of want to reduce that risk of fighting. Some options there are put them into a livestock trailer, into a tight pen together. It reduces the chances of them charging at each other. I suppose another thing there, a bit of an option there for farmers is to turn them out in the evening time. When he'd be hungry, the rams, you'd be hoping then that they go grazing, there'd be less risk of them going fighting, and they don't tend to fight as much in the dark anyways. Just in relation, some health checks, no more than in relation to the ewe, any damage to the brisket after a busy mating season, checking the feet, getting on top of that early, making sure that there's no problems, obviously getting them ran through a foot bath and getting them in good order. In relation to the dosing, if it's over a wet mating season or even a grazing season from start to finish, liver fluke is going to be more chance of it being prominent. So I suppose dosing accordingly there. We'll run through a bit there actually later on in the presentation on liver fluke. And just in relation then to the nutrition, a ram can lose up to 20% of his body weight during a 6-week mating season. So I suppose kind of to counteract this, if a farmer goes and feeds 0.5 kilos a day, let's say over a 50-day period, it's actually only going to cost 10 to 12 euro for the ram, depending on the price of the ration or that. And I suppose the big benefits of this now is getting the ram back. If he's going into the mating season at a body condition of 4, and he's losing that condition throughout, by getting him back up to that optimum body condition score, I suppose, in the close period or the rest period, it's leaving him a better order for, let's say, getting him ready for the next mating season and making sure he's in top order for going mating with the ewes the following year. So look at, as I say, it's just something to keep in mind. A lot of farmers might kind of disregard it and focus on the ewes this time of the year, but the rams are vital. And as I say, it's for future planning that we're getting them into the top order at this time of the year. Just in relation to a couple of body condition score targets there, and kind of talking a lot in it there, I didn't really say. So going into the mating season, you really want your ewes at that optimum body condition score 3.5. In relation to scanning, you can afford to lose a bit of condition there throughout the mating season, obviously, but still you'd be talking in around that 3.25 obviously you wouldn't want to be going much less than 3 anyways. You really want them in optimum condition. Lambing, see, at the lambing time, then again, you're talking the same as scanning. You don't want them losing much condition there, let's say from that period of scanning to lambing. And then at weaning, obviously the ewes are going to lose condition as they're rearing the lambs, depending on how many rams or how many lambs they have to rear throughout the season. So look at, you're talking in around that 2.5 to 2.75. You don't want ewes dropping below much more, especially not much more than 2.25, because the biggest problem then is trying to get that condition put back on the ewes and getting them ready for the following mating season. So it's all kind of a vicious circle as such. But once you start them off on the right plane of nutrition and having them on that right body condition score from the start, it's easier to maintain that throughout the year. Just in relation to the scanning there, I suppose some of the benefits of it, it determines the status and the litter size of the sheep. You're kind of talking in around the scanning time, 70 to 90 days post mating after the ram is taken away. Look at, it enables nutrition planning based on the litter number. Like obviously, if you've triplets there and if you've 20 triplets and you've only 10 single ewes, the two lots are going to have to be obviously fed accordingly and fed differently. So I suppose it just gives the farmer that kind of knowledge. It identifies any empty ewes, whether farmers go in and sell them, let them out for remating, I suppose, depending on the time of year, depending on what type of system he's running, the options is there. And as I say, it reduces the feeding costs. You're not needlessly feeding sheep, and I suppose it allows for informed future planning and breeding decisions. That's in relation to, again, the next mating season. If there's some problem ewes there that aren't going to lamb, there's no point leaving them hanging around and for another breeding season. Just in relation then, I suppose we'll do a couple of slides. Going to run through a couple of slides here on planning for housing. Some things to keep in mind. Grass availability, it's a big thing. As I say, we kind of touched on the body condition score there. You want them at that optimum body condition score going into housing. I suppose it depends then on the silage or the feed that's available to ensure that you do have enough feed available to get them through the winter period. When they do go indoors, having enough straw and bedding available. Excuse me. And I suppose then the weather kind of is a big thing as well. You don't really want to be housing sheep with wet fleeces and bringing them into a damp environment. You want to have the shed as dry as possible. And we're actually going to touch on that here now in relation to management at housing. The biggest thing is to have the building clean and disinfected well before housing. You want that nice, clean, sterile environment. As I say, you don't want sheep going in with wet fleeces. It's going to create a damp environment, ideal for kind of bacteria and that to thrive in. Have all ewes foot bath before housing. Again, this is to keep out any of that bacteria and then getting any infections in. Obviously, pen them lame sheep away from the rest of the flock. You don't want any problems developing. In relation, then we kind of touched on that already. In relation to the body condition score, the scanning. Scanning determines a lot of that too, depending on the litter size. You want enough straw there to keep, as I say, kind of keep going back to it. You want that clean, sterile environment. You don't want any more problems or infections getting into a shed as it's spread very easily. I suppose lime off, and then especially along the feed barriers where all ewes will be crowding out together and kind of be on top of each other. You want that as sterile and as clean as possible. Just in relation to some requirements at housing, I suppose a lot of lowland flocks, you're going to have your ewes there probably at around in between that 70 to 90 kilos. Depending on slats or on a bedded shed, obviously any sheep on a bedded shed, they're going to require more. So you'd be talking in around that 1.4 meter square per ewe. And in relation then to the feeding space required, then it's we kind of, as I say, a lot of them lowland flock ewes are going to be between that 70 to 90 kilos. You'd be hoping there, especially in relation to the meal, where I suppose, as we kind of touched on it there, all them ewes crowding together around the trough, you'd be looking for that 600 millimeters a piece for the ewes. Just as I say, it's to give them optimum comfort and room there at that time. Just, I suppose, quick checklist then in relation to the housing. You want good ventilation, I suppose, and kind of repeating myself here a good bit, but it all comes back to that clean, sterile environment. You don't want any bacteria or diseases getting into the shed, especially in around the lambing time. So look at, have a clean, dry environment. Ventilation, it's one of the best forms. It's the cheapest form of disinfectant. Have clean air circulating through the shed the whole time. As you can see in the shed there on the right hand side, the vented sheeting on the right hand side, or on the side of the shed. You've space board and Yorkshire board, and they're all options too in relation to the ventilation. constant access to feed, making sure water troughs are cleaned regularly, slatted areas kept clean. You don't want them pulling the silage of that in into the slats, blocking up the slats. You kind of want all that sorted early on in the year. And look at, I suppose, just in relation then having the maintenance in order, I suppose, earlier on in the year, having, I suppose, the feed space is a big thing, having enough feed space for the ewes so that they're comfortable, good light and good penning in the shed, not having pens over full either, is a big thing too. Just, I suppose, then in relation to the lambing time, signs of yogo and lambing, swollen udder, isolated, away from, I suppose, the rest of the flock, kind of away by yourself in the corner, to be mucus discharge from the vulva. As I say, in relation then during lambing, I suppose it's a common thing that farmers do, I suppose, especially part-time farmers there who might be rushing ewes, busy time of the year. Usually after the water bag appears, a ewe will lamb herself within an hour. So I suppose kind of a lot of farmers there might, once the water bag would appear, to be jumping in looking to pull lambs. I suppose there's no actual real need for that. The ewe will work away herself. But as I say, if help assistance is required there, usually give the ewe that hour, give her that chance. And if you do have to intervene, I suppose, kind of touching it again there in relation to the hygiene, having lubricant, having gloves, making sure you're making sure it's a fresh, clean glove. So I suppose you don't want any risk of infection or that at the time of the lambing. It's a very dangerous time of the year, or time, I suppose, for infections of that in relation to the sheep. In relation then, I suppose, post lambing, you want to spray the lamb's navels with iodine, get the colostrum on board for them, tag and mark any lambs. I suppose in relation to the tagging and the marking, I suppose it's especially prominent when sheep are housed, that there could be mismothering occurring, lambs getting mixed up, lambs getting tramped on. So I suppose having them marked, taken away to an individual pen with the mothers is a big thing. In relation to the colostrum intake there, I suppose, as you can see there on the table down the bottom, in relation to that, I suppose we'll say, for argument's sake, a 5 kilo lamb born at first feed, he's going to need to get that 250 ml on board to set him up. And within the first 24 hours, he's going to want to get a litre of colostrum on board. This is just to maximise the chances of him being okay and staying alive, and just having them in the best condition possible, I suppose, for turning out, especially if it is, I suppose, this time of the year there where there's frost and that, in the springtime there where there might be frost or heavy rain in around that February, March time. You just want to have them in optimum condition there. Just touching it again there, the hygiene at lambing, you want that clean environment, straw and lime there to minimize the risks of them harmful bugs or bacteria getting in. Ventilation plays a big part in that. Having clean air circulating throughout the shed the whole time is a big thing. And then, sorry, I didn't touch on it there, but I suppose in relation then to getting colostrum on board for the lambs, if a farmer does use a stomach tube or that, you really need to make sure that it's cleaned and disinfected, I suppose, before use, and especially in between uses. I know if it's left lying below in a shed, it can be very hard to remember to clean it, especially if it is a busy time of the year when there's numerous ewes lambing at one time. But it's just important there, as I say, to reduce that risk of any diseases of that and lambs getting sick. So just some key takeaway points there in relation to the housing, and we'll touch on a bit in grazing management then. Having a clean, hygienic environment, getting lambs moved out into individual pens. If there is lamb mortality, numerous problems, investigate it, get a lamb sent to the lab and identify what the problem is. Any culling problem so that let that be throwing lambs, prolapses, anything like that. You kind of want to identify them kinds of ewes and mark them at this time of the year to allow you to make more informed decisions next mating season. So them ewes aren't going to be about to cause the same problems this time next year. It's just all about leaving the thing that bit handier, I suppose, for everyone in relation to the farmer this year, and I suppose in relation to the mating season and lambing season next year. Benefits of this then, you'll have increased survival rates in relation to the lambs, reduced disease risks and losses, and I suppose improved your recovery then and quicker return to condition. You'll have her back at that optimum body condition score then for going for the next mating season again. And I suppose it's just keeping that circle then as efficient as possible. Just a bit in grazing management there. I suppose the purpose of it, provide high quality grass throughout the year for the stock. As you can see there in the three pictures on the right hand side, there's three different systems there. You have your strip grazing there, your electric fence is up, you kind of graze a block each day. You've rotation grazing is the middle picture there. You've different paddocks split up. Sheep do a rotation in each section and go around. And then I suppose the bottom one then is extensive grazing, where you just have the sheep out on the one paddock of that for the duration. I suppose the biggest thing in relation to it is maintaining optimum sward height, no matter what kind of a system you're using. You're looking for in around that 8 centimeters, grazing it down then to your 3.5 to 4 centimeters. You don't really want to be going much lower than that. Getting the soil test for all paddocks there, you'll be able to determine then your fertilization from that. There's no point, I suppose, wasting fertilizer on ground that doesn't actually need to be fed. Ensuring there's clean water sources in all paddocks, ensuring there's no pollution, I suppose, taking place, animals coming in and out of rivers or anything like that, having drinkers piped up, and I suppose controlling weeds and toxic species in relation to that. Ragwort getting sprayed, sprayed early on in the year, and I suppose getting the paddocks in optimum condition. I suppose just in relation to the closing up of paddocks there, you're hoping there to give the paddocks a 120-day rest period. You'd be looking for in around that 3 months. So you're talking mid to late October there. You'd be looking to start getting paddocks closed up. Just to have them there, as I say, the biggest thing is to have that grass. That grass isn't much good at this time of the year now, but you really want to have it available there in February, March, April, when you are turning ewes and lambs out, when you kind of want that more additional grass. So I suppose to achieve this 120-day period that you'd be looking for, that rest period, late October, you want 20% of your paddocks closed up. And I suppose then come mid-December, especially, I suppose in a month's time, you'd be looking to have 80% of them paddocks closed up, just to ensure that there is enough grass available, I suppose, for the flock, as I say, next February, March, when the grass is more important, I suppose, to the flock. Just then a bit on the liver fluke, we kind of touched on it already. It thrives in wet and warm conditions. So I suppose after heavy rainfall and muggy enough weather there where temperatures might be that bit higher, it requires that mud snail. It acts as an intermediate host and it develops it along. And we'll see now on the next slide there, just in relation to the life cycle of it. The adult fluke in the sheep produce the eggs, which are then passed on to the pasture. And I suppose that's the biggest way in how it spreads. Them eggs are passed on to the pasture. Other stock then ewes grazing around it. That's how it gets around. There's 3 stages. You've early immature fluke that goes from week 1 to week 5. Immature fluke then is week 6 to week 11, and then you have mature fluke as well. Just in relation to controlling it, I suppose the first thing anyways is to dung sample to determine the level of it on your farm. From that then you'll be able to determine what you need to dose and how much you need to dose with. There's 6 different active ingredients. You can see them there. There's triclobendazole and clostanol are actually probably the 2 most common active ingredients that's used. A big thing would be now to make sure to rotate the active ingredients. I suppose a common mistake that a lot of people might make is might rotate the different products, but then the 2 products could actually have the same active ingredient. So as such, the farmer isn't gaining anything from it because they're actually being fed or they'll be dosed with the same active ingredient. So there is just, I suppose, that increased chance of anthelmintic resistance build up on that farm. In relation then to grazing management, try not to be grazing high risk pastures. In relation to the snail habitat then management, I suppose the mud snail thrives in that wet, muggy environment. So I suppose one option there is to close off them wetter paddocks. What you might lose in the grazing, you'll actually be gaining in less animals being infected or affected by the liver fluke. And I suppose another thing then is actually to drain them wetter areas. In relation to the monitoring then for infection, fecal egg count there is the way forward in relation to that. And I suppose as you see there on the right hand side, that's kind of just a quick overview of the life cycle of the fluke and how it actually gets passed on to the sheep over through time. So look, I suppose just some take home points there. I know we kind of ran through it there fairly quick, but I suppose ram management, a lot of farmers are forgetting about that ram after the mating season and only starting to worry about them now in next July and August when they're going looking for them to turn them out. So you really want to have them that body condition score for turning out at mating, and that kind of starts this time of year, and having them in good order. The importance of body condition score in ewes, especially having them at them target body condition scores at different times of the year. As I say, ewes will lose that bit of condition, I suppose, after rearing the lambs, but it's getting them back into that optimum conditions for the next mating season. It leaves things much easier then, I suppose, for the lamb and at the next time of the year. As I say, avoiding the resistance build up at dosing time, not using the same active ingredients over and over, changing them up, and I suppose in relation to the two products, then just checking the active ingredient on each product to ensure that you are actually changing the active ingredient. And I suppose that's just one thing that I meant to touch on there, is the importance of the sheep census. I suppose it's something we kind of see each year. There is farmers actually forget to submit the sheep census, or there's a mistake in it. And I suppose the big problem with that then is the difficulties when it comes to schemes, not actually being entitled to get into schemes, not getting payments from schemes. So just ensuring there, it's usually the deadlines are there. Last year it was the 31st of January for posting off the sheep census, and it was the 14th of February there for sending it off online. So it's just something for farmers to keep in mind. And look at, I suppose that's me finished up. So thanks a million for listening there, and we'll touch on some of the questions there now. I'll hand you back to Brendan.
Thank you very much, Dylan. Brilliant presentation there. So this stage of the evening now, I'll like to just remind you again that you can still send your questions into the Q&A tab at the bottom of your screens, phones or tablets, and I'll ask our co-host this evening, Tom Kelly from the Teagasc office in Ballina, to start turning on his camera, and Tom is going to put your questions live there to both Dylan and David. So put your questions in there, and Tom, you're with us there. Good evening, Tom.
Good evening, Brendan. Yeah, and two excellent presentations there. So we'll just start with David Coen there. So some questions in for David. Do sires have to be genotyped for their offspring to receive star ratings? David.
They do, yeah. That's on the pedigree side. So all pedigree flocks, they need to have sires to get Eurostars. Yeah.
Okay, and again, David, what do sheep farmers have to record for the Lamb Plus program? A lot of farmers, I suppose, aren't too fond of recording, data, I suppose, especially when they're very busy.
Yeah, exactly. So look at the Land Plus program for the lowland side. They need to record at this time of the year. They will record their pregnancy scans. They'll record then the lambing date when the ewe lambs, the weight of the lamb at birth, the lambing difficulty of the ewe, and the different aspects for ewe's milk, vigor, a few different aspects like this. Farmers can do any kind of level of performance recording. It doesn't necessarily mean they have to do a certain amount, but it's a case of the more they do, the more points they'll get on their data quality index, is what's called. So they give all the lambing information. They'll then weigh the lambs at 40 days of age, so around 6 weeks. That's just to take in the milk from the ewes. That's anywhere from 20 to 60 days bracket. So look, most farmers will pick in one weight will cover all the lambs at that stage. Then do them again at 100, and then again at 150 days of age, and that will give us the information for Eurostars.
And again, David, is there much changes to the star ratings from one year to another? I suppose on the suckler side, farmers see their star ratings in some cases going up and maybe more frustratingly coming down in some years.
Yeah, so look at like that as information keeps coming in, the stars will move. We've seen the stars were definitely back maybe 4 or 5 years ago before the DNA came in were a lot more volatile than what we see now. As the information came in before, it would have a bigger aspect because of the DNA aspect of the sheep breeding. We can have an awful lot more confidence in it, and we don't see the stars moving as often as certain aspects come in, say like the new carbon index comes in and new developments come from research that can have an effect on the stars. But in general, we're seeing very little movement.
Okay, and are there plenty of rams available for commercial farmers out there looking to qualify for the sheep improvement scheme and that?
There are plenty of rams out there. There should be there. Now, again, you want to be sure you're getting out good and early for these schemes, because look, there's plenty of farmers out there looking for them. You don't want to be left with having any sort of ram. You want to be selecting the ram that'll do the job for you first and scheme second.
Okay, and how do I genotype my rams if not in It says, the question says herd plus, but I suppose that should read lamb plus, should it?
That's the Lamb Plus scheme. Yeah. So like
Yeah.
if you're not part of the Lamb Plus program, you can get your and you are a pedigree breeder, you can get your ram lambs genotyped. Um, with us, you just wouldn't get your subsidy on that. For the kind of hillside, then you need to be a member of one of the hill groups to get your rams genotyped.
Okay, thanks, David. So now we might transfer over there to Dylan. So Dylan, when should I start feeding meals to ewes coming up to lambing? When would you recommend?
Well, I suppose the big thing there in relation to that in the feeding of the O's is kind of the scanning. The scanning determines a lot of that. Any of them O's there, I suppose, if you triplet Joes there, you're talking the 10 weeks. Twins, you'd be back then at 8 weeks, and then I suppose singles, you'd be time enough then 6 weeks out from lambing. But yeah, kind of the scanning kind of determines that time frame, and has a big bearing on it. So I suppose just basing it off that, but you'd be talking that triplets 10 weeks, twins 8, and singles 6.
And again, when is the best time to get my ewes scanned?
Yeah, look at ideally there, the ideal time period is the 80 days post mating after the ram is taken away, but anything in around, I suppose, between the 70 and 90 days, but 80 days would be the target there.
And again, Dylan, how do I know how much meal to feed to the flock when they are housed?
Yeah, well, I suppose that kind of comes back depending on the condition that they're in. Any of them thinner ewes that I suppose have taken away, I suppose, in that mid-pregnancy management stage, you'd be talking in around your 300 to 500 grams a day, depending on how much condition they've lost. Any of them other sheep now, as I said, in relation to the triplets, twins, and singles, that all kind of be starting on 0.2 kilos at the start, and then if the does need to be increased, I suppose getting closer to lamb, and if they're not putting on enough condition, it can be increased, but you'd be talking no more than your 350 grams there.
Okay, and again for Dylan, a question on foot rot there. This is from a farmer who's doing regular foot bathing being carried out on the farm, wondering could it be a cod infection? Replacements are reared on the farm, only the rams are bought in. Seems to be a problem on lowland only, that it clears up when the sheep go onto mountain type land. Would you have any comments on that?
Well, I suppose without knowing, I suppose the farm, I suppose the problem there could be the stocking density, especially if it's in relation to the just when the sheep are grazed on the lowland. I suppose maybe reducing the stock density could be one. Foot bathing regularly would probably be the best advice there. But if he's doing that already, you could have a problem there in relation to the cod. You could have a cod infection or a foot rot infection. If the foot bathing is doing nothing there, you're probably talking then you could go down the route of using the vaccine, or in relation to, I suppose, in more severe cases, you'd be using antibiotics. But I suppose I suppose the best and most effective way would be the foot bath, and regularly cleaning it out, disinfecting your tools and your hands after dealing with any sheep, I suppose, that have it, and just getting that regular foot bath period going. That'd be kind of just now what I'd be thinking on it.
Okay, and would there be any different symptoms to the normal foot rot, we'll say, with the cod infection?
No, the two of them are actually to be two of them, it'd be are caused kind of by similar enough bacteria. You'd have to just it'd be kind of based on a case by case basis in relation to the sheep. But as I say, without really seeing, you wouldn't know for sure. But I suppose that would be the main kind of thing. The foot bathing is the best way for any infection, whether it be cod or foot rot. The advice would kind of be that the foot bathing is the most effective way forward.
Okay, that's great. So, Dylan, thanks very much. And at this stage, I'll hand you back to Brendan, our host.
Thank you very much there, Tom. That's a brilliant job there doing the question there this evening. So thanks again very much there to our two speakers there this evening, David, and indeed to Dylan there for two brilliant presentations. I suppose we're just about out of time this evening, and just want to thanks again to all our viewers there for staying with us and engaging with us there tonight. We hope you found the webinar beneficial. We'll get the recording uploaded there to the Teagasc Mayo YouTube channel there in the coming days, so do keep an eye out for that. Indeed, all of the previous webinars from the previous episodes are all up there on the Teagasc Mayo YouTube channel, and And indeed, we'll share the links there out on our social media channels there, the Facebook and Twitter pages. So stay tuned and keep an eye out for those. All that's left for me to say is that we'll be here again next week for the final episode in this current series, where Kevin Madden, an agricultural catchments program advisor based there in Teagasc and Ballina, and Kevin will give us a talk there on the agricultural catchments program, and we'll show results there from the catchment site there outside of Ballina there. While Asset Advisor Peter Coen there from Teagasc and Ballina will be with us there to talk to us about water quality trends and measures there to improve water quality. So that's all happening next week for the final episode there in this current Teagasc Mayo winter webinar series. So with that, it's good night from us all here in Teagasc and Mayo, and we'll see you all again next Tuesday evening for the final episode in this current series, and this current and same link will work for each episode. So good night from us all, folks. Good night.